Greetings, everybody. Dr. Espen here. Today, we are joined by the incredible Jason Reynolds. And today's going to be a conversation about how to go quantum. Jason is a coach, a mentor, and I've been observing some of his work in terms of what he teaches about consciousness, about quantum science, about men's health, about how to connect with ourselves and take that journey inwards. So I'm really excited to have that quantum to quantum conversation today, because Jason is a person that I really feel people need to hear more from, and certainly I would like to hear more from as well. So let me start by saying, Jason, welcome, brother. How you doing today?
Very much, Espen. I've pleasure to be here. So I just saw something come up about my mic being muted, so I was just
you unmuted.
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so let's just get straight into it. Many people have heard about the word quantum, and it's kind of like a stigma at the moment. It's a hype. Obviously, a lot of the work that I do has to do with quantum. But I want to check in with you. What's your understanding of, let's call it, the quantum?
So to me, the quantum is quite simply just a whole. And I don't mean a hole is in the ground. I mean the whole is in everything that exists. So for me, the very basis of the word is the recognition of everything as it is, as it always has been, as it always will be. But it's our particular relationship with it's going to change. So to me, quantum as a statement or as a word is encapsulating all that there is.
Beautiful. All that there is, a field of divine intelligence. Okay, so how does someone access this quantum? If one wanted to do so, how do we access this superpower?
Well, I mean, to me, the access is there always. I mean, it's never not been there. And to me, it's I suppose a little bit of what we're saying just before is everything is available to us. To me, everything is in support of us. The only thing that we, I suppose, limits our access to all of what is available is simply our relationship with ourselves. But for most of us, I believe we've become so distracted, so engaged, and even at times entertained by what it is that exists outside of us. Not because we ignore what's within us, but simply because we don't know how to access what's within us by navigating the forever unknown. And for many of us, even with the world around us, we've come to determine it by a measurement of what we know, rather than in our own true sense of freedom is our ability to move into the unknown and to be able to navigate what is not present, what I have not been exposed to, and what I have not known. And I would say, like, if we look at the other side, that everything that is known to an individual is a very limitation of their own adventure. But for many of us, we've been schooled in certain ways that if we know things, maybe from things like trivial information, that there's a certain level of intelligence or book smarts that comes with it. But, this has been placed upon us for, I would say generations. And it's got to a time now where what can never be denied is our truth. And ultimately, people are seeking something far beyond that. There's, common terms of, unschooling and people unlearning. And these are starting to emerge, whereas, these were revered some time ago to get a good education. I think people are starting to really come to a point in their own life that to access everything that exists around you only comes through you. And something that I always look to is that when we can recognize that our greatest fear is the exposure of our own significance, it's not of failure. No one's scared of failing. We're very good at that. We do that every single time in every single way, and we judge ourselves for it. But when we can encapsulate and at a quantum level accept the whole of our own significance, speak of our brilliance, what starts to occur in our own life is we start to develop a value for our own self, a worthiness within our own self. And when we have a worthiness for anything, we provide an environment around it to support it. If we have something that is valuable to us, we'll look to put an environment that will secure it. Maybe a vault, a safe of some sort, or in recent times, the origination of government came about for the security of things of value. And ultimately it was to hold that for people, because someone could create something of value and someone else could come and take it. Governance in an external form came around in the protection of wealth. So when we start to recognize our own wealth, what we start to do by nature is create space, because we see the value in the opportunity for us to express ourselves. And again, that's an inherent part of us. That's not something that we learn. That's what we are. So when we start to create that space, we start to have this experience that we think is quite ethereal and magical and coincidental, that suddenly things start to align. Suddenly things start to come in my favor. But if we believe that, we have to then keep working at it rather than aligning with the way that it already is. So when for me, the real part of accessing this is about an individual's capacity to create space in their life, but more importantly, hold that. Because we're in such a pursuit of things of value that when we get them, we forget the actual steps that we took to get there, and we discount them in favor of holding onto the wealth, holding onto the car, holding onto the business, holding onto the relationship, rather than valuing the actual wisdom that actually got us to that particular place to experience these many things. And to me, the access of that is inherent within us. We don't need to learn it. It's more about releasing and letting go of the things that we've allowed ourselves to interrupt that native, not natural, not something we've learned, but that native engagement which is within us. And when we do so, and possibly, in your own experience as well, is that we've come to that particular place, it is effortless. And there again presents a challenge, because for most of us, when we don't work hard for something, when we don't sacrifice, there's a little bit of a problem with our own level to receive and exchange things, because we don't feel we've actually put the sweat in, the blood in, to actually deserve what we have. So we don't feel in full ownership. And to me, when we create space in our life, that is the true determination and nature of wealth in everyone's experience, is that ability. And that's, to go further into, but it's, to me, at a time that we are in, and a measured experience we're in this world, it's in the absence of space. And I think that's what we're all doing at the moment, in the opportunity to transcend time, to move into space.
Mm-hmm. And when you say space, what does that look like? Let's say we've got a person, he's working as an accountant, or someone else, she's working as it can be anything. Like, let's say everyday mums and dads. And when you say to them, create space, and that we have everything we need within, how would one know this or feel this? What does creating space mean? Do you mean let go of all the stress and the rough and the things that we are doing? Let go of the materialistic addictions, and sit still in meditation? What are some of the tangibles around this?
Well, for me, that to me is along the lines of identifying a problem in order to fix it, and that can bring relief. And for some of us, relief can be revered because we've never had it. We've been so used to just being, working and pushing and forcing against what's actually occurring. So yes, there's elements of space can be, do I, in each particular moment when I'm presented with something, have an experience of ease where whatever's being presented to me, whether it's perceivably good or bad, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's offensive or supportive, am I reacting to that? Am I able to receive that before I react to it? And it might be a matter of difference in a couple of seconds. But also space is to look around my environment. Have I chosen my environment the way it is? Like you talk about the accountant. Do I actually want to be an accountant in this box that I'm working in? Or do I, as an accountant, do I want to actually consider, well, how do I want to be an accountant? And you look at it maybe even something more tangible as in a relationship. We've been conditioned to think the right thing with relationships is to meet people, to marry them, and then to live in that particular way. And there's all the other constructs that come with it. But who as an individual gives themselves the space and then assumes their own authority to consider, well, what do I want in a relationship? I actually want to be able to be with someone, but I don't want to be reliant or them reliant upon me. I don't want to spend all my time with them, or I do want to spend all my time with them. I want to be able to have a very free expression of my sexuality, or I want to have a very controlled one. But the thing is to suggest here, there's nothing right or wrong. It first comes down to the point, am I choosing the environment, or is the environment around me determining through morals, ethics, or social structures what is right or wrong? So a space is to consider your own voice and allowing your own voice to be the key influence in the experience you're having.
Love that. And I remember reading a book, and I teach this in one of my seminars. There was a book called The 5 Common Regrets of the Dying. And the author is a palliative nurse by the name of Bronnie Ware, Ware. And she was Australian, actually. And as a palliative nurse, she cared for thousands of people on their deathbed before they passed. And she would always ask them, what do you regret in life? What do you regret in life? What would you have changed? What do you regret? And she was taking notes through these thousands of case studies, and eventually wrote this book, The 5 Common Regrets of the Dying. And what you speak of as in the conditioning of society, and not just of society today, but of us growing up, of our parents saying, you've got to do this, and you've got to study, you've got to get a good job, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that. It's just an immense amount of conditioning. When I reflect upon this book, she says that the number one regret of all regrets of thousands and thousands of people was, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to me and not the life that other people expected of me. So I can see some really good and pertinent similarities there between what you're saying here, as in creating space within your life, and actually maybe perhaps for those listening and watching, taking a moment to write down what it is that you truly want. What makes your heart sing? What makes time and space disappear? What brings you a tear of joy and gratitude? And what do we need to do right now to live the lives that are true to us and not the life that other people expected of us? I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So when someone starts to go ahead now.
I was just going to say that one of the things that, because I resonate with what you're saying there about, like what it is that I want in life, and but there's a point, I suppose, in all of our own awareness that what is I and what do I quantify as I, and that's part of, again, the space that we create to be able to give ourselves to explore that, whether that's 15 minutes that we give ourselves when we wake up that's just dedicated to me, or whether that's a couple of hours or days a week, whatever that may be, as we find more value in ourselves. But one of the things that I really encourage is there's this concept of love and light, or seeking the light, or following the light. My perspective is the complete opposite to that, because the light is where we've been, what we've seen, what we've experienced, what's already been exposed. It's the darkness in all of us that houses all of our riches. And this, to me, goes back to us, hiding away from our own brilliance and significance, that we support that by fitting in, rather than being able to, like what you're saying, to have that courage to be authentic, to actually say something that is going to cause people to go, what are you actually saying? What do you mean? Or how can you possibly perceive that? So one of the things I really recommend for people is, and it's a challenge at times, but to any area in their life where they're challenged, before they actually go to look at what they want, is to spend an inordinate amount of time and to be disciplined as such to actually see life as it is, to the degree that, okay, I have, and maybe for some of us, an easy place to start is a mild level of trauma where we have an issue in our life, but to actually go into that and to become present to it, and even to liberate myself, say, well, I actually did that. Like the relationship I have with this person, it's not working. When I actually stop and consider it, what did I do? How did I do that? What's actually happening at the moment? Not what the solution is, not what, is right or wrong, but what actually is happening as I perceive it at the moment and how I have created that. Because for me, once we actually do that, if I could say this is a concept, and this is where I feel so many people put so much energy into life, but they experience very marginal results. They've worked hard and they've put a lot in. So a very dynamic of our own existence is that what we are present to and what we are taking responsibility for. And I quantify responsibility not from a point of blame or burden, but responsibility is I take responsibility for the things in my life that I believe I can change. So I'm going to take more responsibility in my life by the greater amount of self-belief I have and the less beliefs I buy into. To me, you only have one or the other. It's a belief or self-belief. And one's to yourself and one's in subscribing to outside. But the thing is, when I have a greater amount of self-belief, I then allow myself to take more responsibility. As I take more responsibility, any action that I take is only going to impact what it is I am being responsible for and accepting responsibility for at that moment. So if I'm looking at my life and I'm only seeing 10% of my life, if we were to sort of break it down like that, and then I took action, it's impossible for me to affect the other 90%. Because I'm not aware of it. I'm not present to it. It might have an impact, but I don't see it, so I don't receive the flow that comes from that. But instead, if I only see that 10% and I put all this energy and commitment into that particular space, I'm only going to impact a small amount. But if I can step back and establish a starting point where I see more and all of it, that same amount of energy is going to have a greater impact upon my life. And for me, that's we're very much rushing at times to consume or to get to a point, or when I get there, things are going to be right. But nothing can happen outside this moment and this perpetual ongoing moment. It's to me that's never going to change. We can wish for it to change. We can strive for goals and force ourselves towards an outcome. But when we get there, that's not sustained because we're forcing against something that is obviously present to us. But when we can recognize all those forces of opposition, which mainly are ourselves, then we can start to go, okay, we're at the starting point. I get where we're at now. So now I can start to navigate. And these wheels I've got in this car, they're not going to make it over this land. I'm going to have to just take a second and let's put some better tires. Let's get some better suspension because I now see the landscape upon which I'm living and which I intend to navigate. So to me, that's a really important one. And I'd say for many of us, and I'm fairly sure in your own experience as well with people, is that they're wanting to get somewhere, but it's generally an absence to the power that they already have in where they are, if that makes sense.
That is deep. That is really deep, but I completely understand what you're saying or understand what you're saying here. That's cool. Okay, when a client starts to work with you, a student starts to do this kind of work through quantum movement, etc. What are some of the shifts that they normally see? Would you see, and let's not go, and say this is has to take place, but would you say they leave their jobs, they start to meditate, what are some of the tangibles that you can see? Are we talking about, I know you work on the Present Moment project, which I'd love to get to after this, but before we do,
sure.
what are some of the things that you can see that some of the results that clients have had over the years?
Look, probably the biggest one is humility to begin with, is that they don't have all the answers. So that's a big starting point that, as an adult, there's the concept of how much you know, and even kids really bring this to my attention, and you see it with adults where a kid will come and ask a question and an adult will have to have an answer for the sake of having an answer. So to say I don't know is a very liberating thing for an adult, and actually mean it, because suddenly it opens up I'm going to explore that. I can receive some information now. But what we look at is we don't, I suppose, teach people to fix things. What we focus upon is the foundation that aligns with what I say existence. And the number one thing that opposes our existence is interruption, that we believe that we know better. And, this has been lost in generational wisdom over the years, is that there isn't anything important to know. I've learned it all through school and I've learned it all through now, and I'm, I'm a center point for information. So the experiences of people most recently to refer to, that they find themselves, leaving their jobs. They find themselves, deepening their relationship, or actually bringing into the life of conversations that are not fulfilling their relationships. Look, without going too much into it, but it's everything from that all the way up to, not being able to sleep at night, to overcoming terminal illness, to choosing a direction to have the courage to actually choose what it is in their life. And for me, I believe we meditate all the time. We don't have any meditative practices, but we work with, I suppose, energy. And what we encourage people to do is to understand the practice that most works for them. So it's from the starting point where I suppose I looked in the past where you would teach people this in order to get to that. And then once they develop their awareness, it'd be like, well, now you can expose you to these deeper concepts. To me, I like to go to why not start with the truth? Why not give the person the capacity to understand how to get up? Because the only thing that's challenging them is their fear of falling over. So if I can teach them how to get back up each time, then what happens is they tend to take bigger steps of their own accord, not by, force or pushing again, but it's, I've decided I want to do this. I'm going to explore that. So, we have the focus, I suppose, in a nutshell, if there is such, is integration. And when you're in a quantum integration, there isn't anything else outside of you that influences you. And therefore, things like a terminal illness, a sickness, a condition, whether it be physical or mental, whether it's a relationship issue, it all comes back to the same thing for me. It's just an indication of my lack of integration between the physical and energetic parts of me. Whilst they are disintegrated, I'm going to have all these experiences in life, whether it's my job's not suiting me, whether my relationship's not authentic, whether the career that I'm, fulfilling is not really me, whatever it may be.
I love that. Can you say that one more time? It's a lack of integration between the physical and the energetic. Just reiterate that for us. That's really powerful.
Yeah. So if we're to look at, like, say, two circles, and let's say one was energy, and some may call that spirit, and let's say the other one was physical, let's say matter. Those two things, when we are brought into this particular space and inherently what we are, they are in an integrated state. There is no separation or identification between them. We've created identification when we've tried to step into and be something else. So we've created a disintegration, which means not being myself. When those two are together, they act as one. When those two are separated, the space in between energy and matter is called the mind. And the mind is the place where all information is reserved and held. And, it's quite phenomenal, the mind, and what I can access. And I can be right in so many ways because it's there. But the mind is the collective knowledge of the past, the future, anything else that's not in this particular moment that I subscribe to in order to find someone else's affections within me that I can't fulfill myself. So when I look to those two parts, the irony is that, and the ego might be another word here, is that when I just call it, when you're disintegrated compared to when you're integrated, you experience something called the ego, and we give that a voice, and we give that a name, and we give it a concept. But that is just a space that we've learned to navigate outside of ourselves. So when we do that, it's such a challenge to actually be integrated, because it means it's some place before we actually practice being there, we feel like we're alone. We feel like we're different, because the only person with me on my path is me. And when I haven't spent time with them, I'm spending time with a stranger, and I don't know how they're going to react. I don't know how they're going to respond. I don't know what to say. I don't know if they're into this or into that. And for some of us, that's triggered through trauma or triggered through pain. That, I've had enough of all that. I'm going down this lonely path to begin with until I find that fulfillment. So, yeah, to me, I don't buy into the mind and body and spirit and all the other things that are there and beyond that, and emotions. This is a complex idea that man has made in order to keep people distracted from the simplicity of their own existence, so that they can start to create things. Because just consider, if we were going to, there's talk of control in the world at the moment, but I would say in the world at the moment, the only thing that controls you is a greater amount of organization, and energy exists and will seek highest organization, the highest expression of organization. Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound so sexy when it comes to a philosophical tone to talk about organization, but divine organization in the way in which we work is evidence. And energy itself is going to seek that. And when we can start to understand that the only thing controlling us is that it's not people, it's not groups, it's just a greater degree of organization that is committed to a particular expression of life. As soon as we start thinking people are right or wrong, well, we're then subjugating ourselves to be lesser than them. And to stand in and to be godlike and to be, is simply just to create my life. You know, and that particular part is what we keep missing out on because we've complicated a need to understand the immune system. The immune system doesn't need you to understand it. It already knows what it's doing. It doesn't need you to come in and check over its shoulder to see what it's doing. It's working perfectly. We don't need to understand how blood flows. We don't need to understand why our hair grows in particular ways. We don't need to study all of these sciences. These are observable things that are already in order. When we come into trust, we allow those things to happen. But the real truth when it comes down to the guts of it is what people are fearful of doing is actually creating and bringing. I don't mean innovating, improving. I mean actually bringing something that's so raw within you that you're scared to show because it's true to you that you haven't shared with anyone else at any particular time. And that's, you know, sometimes where we have beautiful relationships with people is that we start to find in that love and appreciation or the attention that other people provide us is sometimes an ability to start to, you know, roll that out and start to share it. But if we stop focusing upon wondering how our body worked and wondering and trying to be healthy because of the food we ate, our life would be so much more enriched. I mean, it's just to consider if you want to look at control is people are starting to identify themselves now by the food they eat. Food, the nutrient in food has no benefit to you if you're not receiving yourself. If you are blocked as a person, if you're restricted as a person, it doesn't matter what your diet is. It's not going to have an impact or an effect upon you. No plant medicine, no anything will do that. The very nature of our own life is to realize that all the things are available to us all of the time. It's our ability to receive them that makes them valuable. Our ability to integrate them that makes them valuable.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking about organization, divine organization, trillions of cells working together, doing all these magnificent things, and we don't even need to think about it. And yet we so often place our attention to things that have been organized and that is specifically organized within a way of fear, such as we give our attention, we place our attention upon other things that steal away our focus, our life force, and so on and so forth. And these distractions, which I know we had a very brief conversation before, and both of us feel the same way. This current situation is nothing but a distraction from turning the attention within to experience and explore our own divine nature. How does one take that path from external stimuli and addiction, call it fear, from fear to love? How does one take that path?
Yeah. The irony is not lost on me in life, and it's something a number of my clients say to me is that, so just wait, I'm just catching this here. So am I better just to do the opposite of everything I think? And I said, yeah, absolutely. That's a good starting point. Everything you've been told, do the opposite, but then realize you're doing it for yourself. So fear, there's no such thing as fear until it's been implanted in you as an idea. Fear is just the unknown. But the irony is for you to grow and for you to excel and for you to expand your life and express it in a beautiful way, where do you have to go? You have to go into the unknown. So what's happened in a very clever way of manipulation and control, but it's just an offer, and people are consenting to that offer to perceive this thing that's out there that is so amazing and unknown to me is the very life-giving aspect of me and the opportunity for me to evolve and grow. Now, if I perceive that as fear, then I don't have to do that, because other people go, yeah, it's very fearful, isn't it? It's different. Well, as a lady I was working with previously said, the struggle is not real. There is no struggle. So to go from fear to love is to recognize that they, well, firstly, are one in the same thing. It's just simply my relationship with myself that's going to change that. And that might be hard for some to consider. But for me, what we're ultimately have been, smoke and mirrored away from is an audience with our own soul and whatever we want to determine that to be. And to me, that's the integrated self, as far as, do I have the capacity to be able to communicate with that? Is that occasional and fleeting? Or is it something that is actually, I have a direct hotline to, that I have a space that I go into? Because it's not about ascension and a higher space, it's about depth. And when we go into that particular depth, we remove those layers, and as we move through them, again, we only find ourselves. So to go from fear to love is to first accept, I am in fear. And not just like as a statement, but to actually realize and become present to all the fear I have in my life. Write it down, document it, and actually really just let the dust settle on that for a day or so. And actually go deeper and further into it. And once you actually do that, you start to realize there's nothing really there. And then ultimately, to move into love, like to me, love is just one thing. It's the ability to receive my own attention. I don't believe love has anything to do with anyone else, but when I can receive my own attention, I'm fulfilled. I can accept you as exactly who you are. And then you have a space where you feel like that you can be yourself, and then you attribute that to a place where, as you can now receive your own attention because I'm not needing or requiring anything from you, it starts to become infectious. And you want to spend time together because you can now receive your own attention. And ultimately, we then have that experience, which then becomes cumulative and let's just say becomes a movement where ultimately I love and appreciate you for your differences. I like you because we're the same in certain ways. But to get to a place of love, I have to see that, the thorns that come out the back of your neck when you're behind closed doors, or I have to see this and still see you as the soul that you are. Because of, what would happen, Espen, if you were able to call me something vitriolic and personal and really, have a go at me? Is that a problem, really? Or is it up to me? If you're able to say that to me, maybe you've got some truth in it, because ultimately what might be most difficult for you to say, but you feel to say it, actually triggers something in me if I can, again, give myself a space to receive it. If my first response is, how dare you, and come forward with my fists, well, nothing's really much going to be achieved. But to be able to receive and hear what other people have to share about you is often what times breaks the facade and the status quo to actually get down to the depth of it. I mean, I'm sure everyone in their intimate relationships, after the first argument, that what some people call the makeup sex or whatever it may be, that there's a deeper space that's found because, oh wait, you saw that and you're still here with me. You've gone through this and you're still here with me. And then we can start to, maybe cultivate and look for that for ourselves. But to me, we first must realize is the most important thing, I believe, as a clear function at an energetic level is the ability to release. We have become so caught up in acquiring, consuming. I'm missing something. I need to go and learn this. I need to know more. There's something I don't get here. I need to go and sit with and study with someone else. Ultimately, to me, the absolute foundation that creates freedom and love in someone's life is the ability to release. And again, this is an inherent function. And if we go back to a physical aspect, if we don't release physically each day, sweating, going to the toilets, whatever other, physical functions that escape me at the moment. But we're going to have some pretty toxic buildup in a very short space of time, and we'll very soon be incapable of possibly living, maybe find death in a very short period of time. But we focus so much on acquisition of information, and the problem is for many of us, we don't actually feel the pain of that through cancers, through broken relationships, through broken hearts until we're about 30, 40, and 50. Because we don't understand how actually significant we are. So we think, oh, it's not doing me any damage, and that cumulative effect over all that time eventually gets to a point where we've created this mess in our life that has now become toxic. So for me, it gets to that particular stage where releasing is the key part, because when I don't mean getting rid of things, I mean releasing as far as changing your relationship with the way that something was in your life to the way it exists right now. And the more that we can do that consistently and regularly, then what we start to align with is life. And then we start to actually see things moving with us, for us, and through us. And that to me that's most important, rather than just trying to not be fearful or trying to be courageous or, trying to be more loving, if that makes brings a clarity to it.
Beautiful. And this, I mean, people listening and watching this would certainly feel into this and perhaps say something like, wow, I haven't heard this side of it before. And that's why I think this is so powerful, because it gives us permission to not just learn new things, but to perhaps unlearn some things. I know that's a big thing for our students, is that very often they come in and they're like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, and realizing within themselves that they have everything that they need to do it. It's not me teaching them something new. Often it's something that they've been doing or hanging on to or
Mm.
being attached to, or a persona or a way or an idea or a conditioning that is just not serving them anymore. And in essence, just letting go of that attachment, as you said, releasing from it, they realize that they already have it. And this is
Yeah.
such an interesting concept, isn't it? Because it's not
Mm.
needing to go and do and train and learn. It's just unlearn and just remember who you are.
Yeah. I look, it's a thing I've always sort of thought. I love what you're saying. You know, it's kind of like the patient going to the doctor and telling them how they want to be fixed. It's in the same way that we have this infinite capacity within us if we choose to explore it. But it's an opportunity, it's an offer. The soul's not sitting there going, come on, come on. Time's irrelevant. It doesn't need you to actually recognize it. It's already recognized itself. It's an opportunity for it. It's not a right. It's an opportunity. And we've also got the opportunity to completely deny it and ignore it. And as we're open to doing that anytime as well. But to me, if we've got this significant capacity that we use to let's say align with or be enlivened or enriched by or guided by, one thing that's often missed is that we go to that in a prescriptive way rather than asking that particular intelligence, what is it that I need to, not what I need to fix and how do I fix it, and utilizing those power, but instead, well, what is the thing I need to release? So for me, a real key part of releasing is not identifying the flaws that, there's this thing with my mum and what she does, geez, it triggers me. I've got to get go of that. I've got some beliefs around money. I've got some beliefs around this area. And to me, that's a real problem in modern schooling, is around the mind and our own consciousness, is beliefs are a non-issue. Beliefs only exist when you're disintegrated. When you're in self-belief, they're not there, but you either have belief or self-belief, as I was kind of saying before. But so as an individual, when you're able to, releasing is very important, but you need to be, in my experience anyway, you need to do it from a process where you don't actually know what you're releasing. Because if you know what you're releasing, then you're controlling the process. Then you're determining when you're finished and when you haven't finished. So there's a part of, from getting into a state of integration, that when you start to release, you have no idea of what it is, but it'll present to you. And to me, that might be considered a meditative state, but it's something that is so simple for all of us to do. And that's what, I find, and I'm sure you come across it as well, especially in a quantum space, is that I've never had one person come to me and start a learning and saying, I understand what you're all about, or I understand what we're going to go through. Instead, they're saying, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here. I don't, because I don't understand exactly what you do or what we're actually doing in this space. And that to me is, you can't facilitate everyone. And I don't intend to facilitate people that want to heal, because people who want to heal believe there's a problem. To me, there is no problem. The problem is your perception of that something is wrong. But if we can actually get to a place of integration, we don't keep trying to fix things. We don't keep trying to change things. Instead, we become that stick down the stream where we allow ourselves to be taken with it, rather than complaining about what the river should be doing and how it should be working and what it should be doing. Instead, we're enjoying the ride. And I would say that, as a big philosophy of mine, or a statement I work with, is that everything exists to support you. And when you can come to understand that, and that's, through pain, trauma, and look, trauma is a big one as well. And, it's another whole open book, isn't it? But it's trauma to me, it's a distraction. Yes, we've had that experience, but we only experience and become overwhelmed by trauma when we're not able to be present now. When we learn to be present now, we shortcut this whole idea of needing to work through our stuff. Our stuff is only there because we're disintegrated. Our stuff is only there because we're wanting to fit in. We're denying ourselves the ability just to be myself in this moment. And when I can be myself in this moment, that trauma that was the boon moment in my life where it's actually strengthened me, given me resilience. But when I am depressed in this moment, that trauma is the most tragic thing that happened to me in my life, and I cannot change it. And it's a hard thing at times for people to conceive until they actually do that. It's not that it's really that simple. It's the fact is, we've complicated things so much. What's actually difficult is creation. So it's not difficult to get go of trauma, but the only reason we believe it is difficult to let go of trauma is because we've complicated it, and we've created such a system through, to me, psychology and other areas where it's justified, like a university course that has an amount of content that's relevant and an amount of content that's making up the course to get it to meet certain external standards.
Yeah.
The fluff,
Exactly.
Well, we've got to put something in here because, they need to do that, and we need to do something to bridge across to this part, rather than just going, I don't know if you had the same experience. I know when I was younger, I used to go to certain people that were speaking on stage. I was always drawn and intrigued to it. And I was like, sorry about language, but not again, not the same stuff again. Like, where's the how to? And is there a how to? Do you actually understand the how to? I'm not interested in the philosophy of it anymore, or hoping and wishing. I mean, that's not what I'm made for. I don't believe any of us are made to hope and wish and have faith. We're here to have understanding. And understanding to me is that point where we're able to take action and be in the moment. But for many of us, we've got caught up in knowing and knowledge. And knowing to me is that very, spiritual concept that has destroyed many people's advancement towards their own truth. And it might be just a word, but I'm sure, as you're well aware of, it's not, when people really find themselves, it's not the most obvious and obtuse things that make the difference. It's the subtle shift that they didn't see. That suddenly is like, and I know when people come up to me and go, that one thing that you said, a year and a bit ago, I was like, oh, and they say that's the catalyst that caught. It's the subtle, an Olympic athlete and working with sort of that type of person, you're not trying to get them to have a 25% difference in their life. It's a 0.1% improvement. But that's the same for all of us. We're all highly tuned. We're all highly significant. But it's just being able to recognize the time, the subtle, and then it goes back to space. And, I suppose, I don't know if I've answered your question or just rambled, but I think that the real point for me is it's much simpler than what I've been led to believe. And I would suggest, do the opposite. If you don't choose to engage in any form of teaching like what Espen's doing or I'm doing or what anyone else is doing, is at first just start doing the opposite to what you think is true, especially in areas that you're stuck. Maybe look and identify what you think you should be doing, and then start observing and exploring the other part of it. That's a starting point for me, because that, to me, I find where all the juice is, where all life is. It's patiently waiting there for you. It's kind of like, this is where it's been. I didn't realize.
I love that. You can see you're talking to how many people are caught up in certainty and the knowingness, when the uncertainty, if you look at the six human needs, many people cling on to certainty when uncertainty is just as important. That's with the adventure, that's the unknown, that's the mystical, that's the letting go and embracing what is. I love that. All right, brother. Yeah. So with you now, final question. What is your message to the world right now? If you had to wrap it up, you're speaking to the world, you're on the world stage, what would you say to our brothers and sisters out there?
To me, it's something that comes down to believing in yourself. And I look at words like authenticity, audacity. And for me, authority as well, and being able to come to ease with the word authority in your life for you, and being prepared to explore what only you can see. Stop buying into this misconception of community is the way forward. Communities are, again, a distraction until we as individuals have found our own independence. And until we find our own independence, we cannot contribute to a community in the fullest form of our own life. We're going to find ourselves like many well-intentioned communities that start but don't end up meeting their mark, their inspiration that brought them to life in the first place. Find your independence, find your authority, and allow yourself to, as I would say, courage to me is not doing what other people can see. It's not doing what's challenging. It's doing what no one else can see. And start to cultivate a place in your life where you can start to move forward and do that. Look in your life to not acquire more, but instead to release, to let go in order to receive. Because acquisition is very different to receiving. Receiving happens in the environment that I am around and that I'm within. There is a multitude of things that are coming to support you, that are conspiring to move through you. Because I would suggest that everything in life and everything in this world, it requires you. You don't require it. The sun, the stars, and everything else in this existence exists because of you and your observance and experience with it. So find courage in actually starting to walk a path that you have not journeyed yet, but one that only you can start to see. Take the first step. Step into the unknown, do what you don't understand, and stop continuing to buy into what you know. So for me, it's about finding at a starting point an acceptance and embrace of chaos, because chaos is a starting point for everything, but then for the capacity to move into ease with that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, brother. And thank you for being on this path of showing up for yourself and showing up for us in these ways. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. If someone wants to learn more, where do they go to find out more about you?
Probably at this initial level is the simplest and quickest way in this space is to go onto Facebook and go onto a page called A Quantum Journey. We do a lot of free, and I suppose we share a fair bit into that particular space. But there's places beyond that. But it's the quantum movement, and that there's also some social media around the quantum movement. But that's probably the easiest, I would say, from there. But I'd also just want to say the same to you for, both of us working in this particular space to provide the space for me to come on and share, and also. It takes a lot, and I've worked in this space for a good number of time, and it's something that I've was very enamored to before we only met an hour or so ago. But is the open offer to go and have a discussion shows me so much about you and your character without actually knowing you, and that's what I found in many areas that I've tried to work with. People of great significance in the past is that they're very much, they want to hold on to what they have. They want to protect what they have, rather than actually realizing the more that they actually let it go and the more they expose it, the greater that they grow in themselves. And that's, I'd say you're a rare individual in my experience to be able to bring that forward anyway.
Thank you, brother. I see that, and it comes back to the shared belief that we both have, that there is so much more that I don't know compared to that which I do know in this life and in this experience. So it's just the wiser you get, the more you understand that you don't know, and that humility and that space, I really appreciate practicing that space, because that's the space that you learn. That's the space where you can grow and embrace. So thank you once again for your time, brother. God bless on this magnificent journey, and thanks for doing what you're doing.
Same to you, Espen. Thanks you very much for having me here too.
Take care, buddy.
Bye-bye.
See you.